Yeah, this is definitely the wildest headline I've ever seen. So an elephant subtracted a 70-year-old woman and then pulled up to her funeral and trampled her corpse. The backstory is the woman was collecting water from her well, hurting nobody, when an elephant appeared and turned her into a chalk outline. She was immediately rushed to a hospital, but when the largest thing in the world with legs presses you, you're probably not coming out of that. A few days later, her family members got together for a funeral and were literally in the middle of performing last rites when the same elephant that put them all there returned. The elephant lifted the soul evacuated body from the funeral pyre. That's a funeral pyre. And in front of her entire mourning family proceeded to reenact the events that got her there. So it's not even like this was an elephant getting its lick back on a hunter. She was literally just getting water. I didn't know how to make this video because it's not like you can really make jokes because like, someone died. But what the hell did you do to make an elephant want to murk you twice? It was at 0 HP and it still wasn't enough. But by far the most out-of-pocket part, the elephant had escaped from a wildlife sanctuary, 124 miles away. Whatever the elephant did, it was premeditated. This was supposed to be a joke and the elephant did it. And if you're watching this video hoping for answers, I don't have any. But considering how smart elephants are and how they very much do not forget, I mean, rest in peace, but there had to have been a reason.
Hi, I'm Cam and this is 1 Minute Murder. 19-year-old Austin Harif was a seemingly average college student at Florida State University. There, he wrestled and pledged Alpha Delta Phi fraternity. But in August of 2016, Austin's family noticed a dark sudden change in him. He started searching things like, must I sleep? I think I'm going crazy, am I? What is white magic? He even searched how to sell his soul to the devil. Austin started telling his relatives that there was an evil presence in the house and he needed to protect them. Austin's sister became so uncomfortable with his new behavior she started locking her door at night. Austin felt invincible, feeling similar to Jesus, and was obsessed with having a career in rap music. On August 15, 2016, his delusions took a turn for the worse when he was on a walk with his father. He saw a light coming from a garage and ran towards it. Inside the garage was John Stevens and Michelle Mishkan. Austin then attacked the couple and fatally injured them with a machete. When a neighbor came over after hearing the screams of the couple, Austin attacked him as well with the machete. When police arrived on the scene, Austin was on top of John, growling and biting his face off. Despite authorities threatening to shoot him, he kept growling and biting the man's face. Austin was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. A psychologist declared him legally insane.
This man ordered the same pizza every day for 7 years, but then suddenly stopped. And the reason was shocking. Part 2. Tracy Hamblin, an employee of Domino's, was worried after Kirk Alexander hadn't ordered a pizza for 11 days, so she drove to his home to check up on him. She knocked on Kirk's door on Sunday just after midnight, but he didn't respond. She looked through the window and could see lights and a television on inside, and a weird noise. Seriously worried now, Tracy tried to call Kirk, but his phone went straight to voicemail, so she rushed back to the store and told her colleagues what she saw, and soon 911 was called, and police rushed to Kirk's home. When they arrived, they heard a man calling for help, and after they broke down the door, they found Kirk on the ground of his home. It was believed that he had suffered a stroke. Whatever the case, it was a very serious medical problem that could have ended his life. 1 day later, and they might have been too late, he was rushed off to hospital where he was stabilized. Staff from the pizza place even visited him in the hospital with flowers and cards, although no pizza.
A 15-year-old girl who was stabbed to death in Croydon was trying to protect her friend from her ex-boyfriend, it's been claimed. The teenager was killed on her way to school in South London yesterday morning. Witnesses claim a boy tried to give his ex flowers and a love note on the bus before chasing her with a foot-long machete when she rejected the gesture. The pair reportedly split up recently, and a row broke out between them, ending in him pulling out the knife. The 15-year-old is said to have leapt to her friend's defence, resulting in her being stabbed. Despite the best efforts of local people and emergency services, she died at the scene. A 17-year-old boy remains in custody.
115 dead bodies were just found rotting inside of this funeral home in Colorado yesterday. This is an extremely disturbing news story. So this is the Return to Nature funeral home in Colorado Springs, Colorado. They specialize in green burials, which is kind of a new trendy thing, which amongst other things means that your body is not embalmed upon your death. So you're kind of left to rot and just go back into nature as you came into the world. But it seems like the owners of this funeral home took that process a step too far. So inside of this funeral home, where there's 2,500 square feet of space, they discovered 115 bodies. I mean, I can't imagine what the interior of that building looked and smelled like. And according to the police department that made this shocking discovery, most of those bodies were so badly decomposed that they can only identify them through DNA. Obviously, this means that these bodies have been stored there improperly for a very, very long time. In another interesting twist, the authorities actually stated that they don't know exactly what this funeral home was doing with these bodies. Some theories include they may have been selling body parts. Obviously, they may have just been telling people they were burying their loved ones and they weren't. Or there could be other gruesome, disturbing things that were happening here that I guess we'll find out about soon. Yeah, so since this happened yesterday, we don't know much about what exactly was going on here, but I'll be sure to update you guys once we find out more about what the hell was going on at this funeral home.
Nah, cause I feel like people either don't understand or they underestimate just what these things are capable of. Like, the scariest thing about them isn't how strong they are. Let me tell y'all a story. I couldn't find the original post, but basically a zookeeper was answering questions when somebody asked what was the scariest thing that ever happened to her. She said that when she first began working, they started her with the chimps. Horrible place to start, by the way. It's like learning how to ride a bike down the Grand Canyon. And one of her jobs was to take empty food bowls out of every chimp's cage in the morning. And the chimps were so smart that they learned to push the food bowls right up to the cage door where the keepers could easily grab it. Well, on her third or fourth day, she noticed one of the chimp's bowl wasn't right at the door. It was a couple feet back where she would have to reach her arm in and grab it, which she was about to do when another keeper showed up and basically screamed at her to stop. The older keeper scolded her and told her never stick your hand in a cage like that, especially with a chimp. The keeper then told her to look into the cage. The new keeper crouched down and peered inside, where she saw one of the bigger male chimps sitting just where you couldn't see him if you were standing up straight. Her stomach dropped, as she realized if she would have reached in for the bowl, she more than likely would have gotten her arm torn off. But the part that she said really freaked her out, she swore that the chimp almost seemed disappointed when she noticed him. To this day, she's convinced that chimp was fully aware that she was new and planned on taking advantage in the worst possible way. The scariest thing about chimps, as smart as you think they are, they're smarter.
They don't know.
Okay.
Come on, man. Ah.
What's up? She's handcuffed. She's handcuffed and chained to a wall.
Oh my God.
Just stay back a little bit.
How-
And just kind of. We're gonna see if the guy kind of wanders back over.
I told y'all where he was.
But I'm more worried.
I know. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I got you. I got you. I got you.
You know what I'm saying?
I got you. I got you. Don't worry about it, because I'm finna go.
If the guy's hit me, there's something wrong. There's more wrong.
No, to get her. Get her. This my house from now on. This finna be my house. Bank, come holler at me. Fuck that, because that's what they doing. That's what they doing. They taking these houses, putting these girls inside these houses. I just located a girl inside this house. The police say she chained up, and the kids say they've been hearing this noise for weeks. But don't worry about it. This is why I'm telling y'all, all these abandoned houses around our house, we need to go in there, fix them up, fuck what the bank talking about. Man, we do it.
Huge trigger warning for this case as it is very upsetting. 37-year-old Nancy Johnson from Alabama and her children were found deceased on the 28th of September. The mother of two drowned her children in the bath before taking her own life. Her children were 2-year-old Jacob and 5-year-old Maya. She also allegedly cut her daughter's throat. She then is believed to have unalived herself with a silk belt in a hallway wardrobe. The children's autopsies showed that they died from drowning, but Maya's blood loss contributed to her death. Heartbreakingly, the children's dad, Derek, was actually the one that found them. He found the bodies of the children on a sofa underneath a blanket. Nancy and Derek were in the middle of divorce proceedings and a custody battle. Nancy also had a history of mental illness. The parents had been ordered by a judge to start seeing the children on alternate weeks. The arrangement was due to start in just a matter of days. The dad wrote, "The amount of happiness and love that emanated from Mia and Jacob was very apparent to all that they were around. Our house was filled with joy and happiness. Their future was so bright in every way possible."
This uncle and nephew were brutally chainsawed on camera because they stole from the cartel. The video that I'm about to explain is extremely brutal and you should not go seeking it. This video shows a uncle and a nephew getting brutally executed by the cartel because they stole from them. The man on the right is the uncle and the man on the left is the nephew. When the video begins, it's just the interrogation. Both men are sitting shirtless against some sort of brick wall. And once the interrogation ends is when the brutality begins, and it's absolutely sickening. The uncle on the right is killed first and he got his head sawed off by a chainsaw, which is a very brutal way to go. There was blood spraying everywhere, even on the nephew. He was then completely decapitated and it happened extremely quickly, this all taking place in a matter of seconds. As I said before, this is a very disturbing way to go, but it was also extremely quick. Especially when most cartels are known for prolonging executions, making them as long and as painful as possible. The killers then move on to the nephew on the left, but instead of decapitating him with a chainsaw, the killer pulls out a hunting knife and uses that. This was way more painful and longer than a chainsaw. It took around 2 minutes to complete, and during it, the victim was alive and conscious the whole time, hearing him struggle and gurgle on his own blood. The noises during this decapitation that you hear are honestly gut-turning. Eventually, the killer does decapitate him and he holds his severed head up to the camera and places it on the victim's torso. And the video then concludes. This video was a message saying that this is what happens if you snitch or steal on the cartel. The uncle's death was much quicker because apparently his nephew was the one who got him involved, and he really had no part. But the nephew's death was way worse because he was way deeper involved into the cartel. So they made it a very slow and painful decapitation for him. Now, the weirdest and strange thing was that these guys were actually pretty brave and strong. They didn't cry nor panic, they just knew what was coming and accepted their fate. Most likely because they've seen this done to many people hundreds of times. Please, I recommend you don't go searching for this video for obvious reasons.
Have you ever thought about maybe becoming a star? Have you ever thought about that? I mean, what if you and I decided to make, if ever you and I got married and we decided to make our own videos, and we added them to different sites.
So this is Corbin Pinnell, aka Jupiter. So when I first saw videos about this guy, I thought the whole thing was a big meme. But then allegations of grooming, of CP possession, and all of that started to surface, and the story took a dark turn. So Corbin, or Jupiter as he likes to be called, is a guy who just makes videos on TikTok and YouTube. But he has been caught many times talking to minors on video calls, asking them for explicit content. I mean, there have also been screenshots leaked of him asking for these images, him being a total creep, admitting to wanting to be with a minor. This guy has been caught trying to do something sketchy with an underage person so many times that I couldn't even show you all the examples if I had a full 10-minute long video. But he's not just allegedly a pedophile. I mean, check this video out. So yeah, it's kind of hard to find the truth in this situation, but a search warrant was allegedly executed on his house dealing with child internet-esque crimes, if you know what I'm talking about. That was a few months ago. I don't know if anything ever came from that, but I mean, there are just so many videos that you can find of this guy where he's literally admitting to sending explicit photographs to, in one of the videos I saw, a child who was 13 years old. He admits to it. He just says it's a transgression of his. I would definitely go check out the creator Linda Binda here on the app. They've done a very good job of covering this whole story, interviewing him multiple times. But yeah, I mean, this is a predator lurking in literal plain sight, admitting to what they've done in the past. So I hope something is done about this situation soon, because it is disturbing.
Oh no. No, 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 no.
This is 3 Guys, 1 Hammer, one of the most sickening videos on the internet explained. Before I begin, I just want to say never go searching for this video. 3 Guys, 1 Hammer was leaked to a United States shock site in 2008. On your screen right now are the killers. The video begins with the man riding a bike down a street when the killers kick his wheels and strike him with a hammer off the bike. The poor victim was just going for a normal bike ride, but it ended up turning into one of the most brutal murders ever. They then take the victim into the woods where the victim is lying on the ground, and it's very clear the victim has already taken a lot of damage. He is semi-conscious and clearly has been struck in the head and face with a hammer. The video then continues to the 2 boys taking turns smashing the victim's face in with a hammer. And the victim's face is just progressively getting worse and worse. It's as if you got a pack of strawberries and just stomped on it. That's what the victim's face looked like. It was completely caved in and red and was 100% unrecognizable. There was blood bubbles as he tried to breathe, his face was just completely mangled and smashed. And if I'm not mistaken, they also put a cardboard box over his head. And the worst part is, the victim was in and out of consciousness throughout the entire video. Also, the sound of him trying to breathe with all the blood and his disfigured face is absolutely horrible. The killers continue hitting the victim in the face with the hammer. They then take out a screwdriver and begin stabbing the victim in the stomach countless times, and then the one killer takes the screwdriver and begins stabbing the victim's eyes out, all while he's still alive. The victim then tries to cover his eyes, which shows that he's still conscious, which is just so unsettling to watch. The killers put this guy through pure hell. I could only imagine the fear, loneliness, and pain the victim had to be experiencing. Eventually, the killers got bored and just wanted to finish the job, so they hit the victim in the head with the hammer a couple more times, extremely hard, which ends up killing the victim. Another disturbing part that stands out to me in this video is that at one point you can hear a car passing by, which turned the killers completely quiet until it passed. And once it did, they just continued brutally murdering the victim. The victim's name was Sergei Yatsenko, and he was just a normal guy going through his normal day when these demons just decided to do this to him. It's just pure murder with no motive at all. Never go searching for this video, please. Everyone who watched it never watched it again and urges everyone not to look it up. It's not the gore that makes it one of the worst, it's the pure evil these kids possessed. Because why in the world would you do this for fun? Rest in peace to Sergei, and I can't believe sickening stuff like this happens.
This is Christopher Westbrook, a TikTok famous chef that was always making recipes and dinner for the sorority house he worked at. Now, people online really seemed to like Christopher. He seemed like this fun-loving chef who cared a lot about the food he was making for these young women. But nobody would have ever seen what was coming next. In August of this year, Christopher was arrested for the possession of CP, meaning he's a hardcore pedophile. And in total, he was charged with possessing, distributing, and viewing CP materials. But this story only gets more and more disturbing. So once authorities got a search warrant for Christopher's belongings, they entered his house and they recovered a laptop and a hard drive. And what they found on that hard drive was nothing short of absolutely disturbing. They found over 700 images of children being abused. Yes, more than 700 images of CP were found on his devices. That is a lot. And to think that before this arrest, he actually had 150,000 followers here on this platform. That's a really big amount of followers, and he could have turned this into some sort of a career. That is, if he didn't make such a terrible, disgusting, deplorable decision. This all started in June of 2021 when the Center for Missing and Exploited Children alerted local authorities saying that there were some explicit images involving children being uploaded to an account on Google owned by this guy. And thankfully authorities were able to sweep in, take this guy into custody, and get him off the streets. Now, a lot of people were actually really pissed at Christopher because just a week or so before he was arrested, he got on TikTok and was begging people for money.
This isn't a video that I want to make, I promise. But as most of you know, I work at a college.
So yeah, he was asking people for donations. I know a number of people donated quite a significant amount of money to this guy. And I don't know if the process has been started to get people refunds or what's going on with that, but I mean, I can't imagine the feeling of those people who donated thinking they were helping this lovable guy out, when in reality they were donating to a hardcore, disturbed pedophile. Just goes to show once again that you can't really trust anybody on this app.
This is Miss Pacman, one of the worst videos on the internet explained. The video that I'm about to explain is about 1 minute long and it starts in a dark room. And the first thing you notice is the screaming in the background. The camera then pans to the floor revealing a severed hand. And it then pans to the bed which Alejandro Ego Chubb is on. The bed was soaked in blood and Alejandro had both of her hands cut off, and at this point you can see the full extent of her injuries. Alejandra had been hit in the face so hard with a machete that she had a horizontal wound going across her face that was so deep it actually reached her ears. The wound was halfway up her face, right in the middle of her nose, and it was horizontal, hence the name of the video, Miss Pacman, because the wound was so deep it looked like an exaggerated mouth. But the disturbing thing is, Alejandra is still alive, and at this point you discover the screaming in the background isn't her, but actually someone else in the house, and according to rumors and reports, it's actually her children. The camera then pans to her face, and it shows she is still aware and conscious. Her eyes moving across the room in complete pain and fear. You hear her struggling to breathe due to the insane amount of blood, and you hear constant gurgling as she tries to hang on to her life. You also hear her try to breathe, but due to the injury, it's extremely muffled. It almost sounds like a young baby crying. You also hear a male's voice behind the camera. Now, the question is this the neighbors who discovered her? And if it is, why in the world are they recording her? Or was it her partner who was responsible for this brutal murder? The camera stays on Alejandra's face for about 30 to 40 seconds, and you see her withering in pain. You hear her trying to scream, and at one point the camera goes closer to her wound, and at this point you see just how deep the wound really is. It's literally 3/4 of the way through her head. This is a very hard watch. You don't see the awful act committed on camera, but seeing the aftermath is traumatizing. Alejandra was pronounced dead after this video was taken. This video is considered one of the worst, and its brutality is compared to Funky Town, 3 Guys 1 Hammer, and much more. Nobody knows how this video ended up on the internet, and it remains a mystery. Whatever you do, don't go searching for the video or picture. It's way different than a regular cartel video, and it's more of a real-life horror video. A complete living nightmare for those in the room. Trust me, it will mess you up completely. Rest in peace to Alejandro Eco Chubb. This is absolutely sickening, and I can't believe people who do stuff like this exist.
When this woman vanished, people feared the worst. What actually happened was so much more sinister than anyone imagined. 27-year-old Linda Spence was a financial advisor from Glasgow. In May 2011, she was reported missing by her parents. They become worried because they hadn't heard from her in a while. When news eventually hit of what had actually happened to her, it stunned the nation. Linda's family initially did an emotional appeal on TV for anybody who knew anything or had seen Linda to come forward. Her distraught mum strangely got a text off Linda's phone. It stated, "Love you, mum," but Linda's mum noticed that usually she puts LUVU, and this said LOVEYOU. Bit of a background about Linda: she was known by her friends to be very wealthy. She actually convinced her acquaintances that she was successful in finance, but this couldn't have been further from the truth. Things got so bad at one point that she was declared bankrupt. However, she then inherited quite a lot of money off her deceased nan, so she was able to keep up appearances. She began doing some dodgy investment deals, and at the time of her disappearance, she was allegedly involved in a multi-million-pound land deal near Stansted Airport. She was taking large amounts of money from various investors with the promise of getting a big return. The reality was that this was a lie. Some big investors involved were John Glenn and Colin Coates. When John started to get frustrated at the lack of money back from Linda, Linda blamed a man called Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben was actually fictitious. John started sending threatening text messages to this Uncle Ben, not realising that the phone was actually controlled by Linda. Linda had numerous different aliases and 20 different phones. 7 weeks after Linda vanished, one of her phones was actually found in a bin in Kilburnie. The phone revealed that a contact of Linda's actually lived nearby. This man was Philip Wade. He was involved in criminality and knew Colin Coates. Police at this point knew that a week after vanishing, Linda's car was spotted on number plate recognition software on the motorway. They were also able to identify that a man's phone pinged the phone mast the exact same time that Linda's car was picked up on cameras at that exact location. The phone belonged to Colin Coates. Now, Colin and Philip were acquaintances of 2 men, David Parker and Paul Smith. When David and Paul were questioned, they admitted to having assisted in kidnapping Linda. It transpired that she'd been snatched off the street in Broomhill in Glasgow in April 2011. She was driven to Ayrshire, and the 2 men were paid £10,000 to babysit her. They were apparently too scared of Colin to set her free. David Parker admitted that she was held at his home for nearly 2 weeks. During this time, she was tortured. She was tied to a chair, and they used an iron, a golf club, cigarettes and bolt cutters. Police would go on to find forensic proof that Linda's blood was in the flat. Colin is believed to have suffocated Linda before putting her body in the boot of her car. Tragically for her family, Linda's body has still never been found. David and Paul were given 11-year sentences. Colin got 33 years behind bars. Philip was given 30 years.